How would you like to make smarter, faster decisions inside of your business? How would you like to use the right numbers to make those decisions? Well, that's what we're going to talk about here today in data-driven decision-making for your business. I'm going to walk through the exact items, the exact elements to make this possible for you. So what we're going to cover are the 6 moves from more data to better decisions inside of your business. This is going to start with the 3-number trap. We're going to talk a little bit about leading versus lagging indicators or numbers, the 5 ways math that makes the entire profit engine in your business run, the scoreboard that matters, how we think about the cadence of decision making, and ultimately, what are the key next steps that you can take to move things forward. Before we jump into everything, I think it's important to take a step back and ask the question, why? Why are you here? Why did you stop on this video and choose to dig into this topic? In any form of learning, it's important to be intentional. So I'm going to encourage you to pause the video and just write down what's one thing. If you watch this content or listen to this content from start to finish, what's one thing that you would like to take away? The more specific you can be, the more intentional you can be, the better the outcome is going to be for you. So pause the video, write one thing down. Got your one thing? Amazing. So for those of you who have not met me, my name is Tanner O'Brien. I am the CEO and senior partner of ActionCOACH Benefit Group. I'm a global trainer and master coach within the ActionCOACH franchise. Former loan officer and mortgage banker, was a vice president of Bank of America on the wealth management lending side of things. I've got over 10 years experience in real estate, business, and economic development. I love finance operations and marketing management. Yay, think about the topic today with data-driven decision making. I have a bachelor's in psychology, and you may be at this point saying, so what? Great, Tanner, cool. Love your stuff there. Well, what's most important about this is not to give you context of things of who I am and what I do, but more the context of I'm the CEO of our business. I run our business just like many of our clients do. And this last bullet point is the most important. In just the first 3 years of being a part of this business, from 2021 to 2023, we grew our business 562% in revenue and 866% in net income growth in just those 3 years because we used the things that I'm going to share with you today. And I think that's the most important context, because if you're going to sit here and you're going to listen to this video, it might be a little important that the person that's sharing the information has been there and done these things before. I'm not teaching from a pulpit. I'm not teaching these things because it's theory. I'm teaching these things because it's the things that we implemented, and we've grown our business significantly as a result. And it's the same systems, the same things that we install in each of our clients' businesses. So with that, I'm going to ask for your permission today to be your coach, to be your facilitator, be your trainer, and share with you some information on how we've done this, how our clients have done this, and maybe some things that will work well for you. So if you haven't heard of ActionCOACH before, we are a global franchise with 1,200 plus coaches across 87 countries. So when I get asked the question of, Tanner, what businesses have you worked with? What does that even look like? Well, I can tell you, over the course of 1,200 coaches and 15,000 clients being coached every single week worldwide across 87 different countries, there are almost no industries or situations that we have not come across. There is something that we, meaning me, has not come across before. The relationships we have with coaches all across the world to get the information necessary for our clients. This is why we continue to be a part of this 33-year-old organization. It's all because it's one playbook that's proven, it's measurable, it's built for owners, and guys, it actually works. So let's really define a couple things here. When we start thinking about what is a business, if we're going to be making data-driven decisions within our business, it's important to take a step back and say, well, what is the definition of a business? The definition of a business here at ActionCOACH is a commercial, profitable enterprise that works without you, meaning that it is a commercial enterprise. It is a business structure that is profitable. Surprise, surprise. It's important that the business actually makes money. It works meaning it continues to operate and things like that. And probably most importantly, it works without you. So I'm going to pause here for a second. Commercial profitable enterprise that works without you. And you may be sitting there going, great, Tanner, I'm probably on one of two spectrums. Either that sounds amazing, I want my business to work without me. How do we make that happen tomorrow so I can go do all the other things that I want to do? Amazing. If you're on that end of the spectrum, fantastic. We can guide you, walk through that here today. Now, if you're on the other end of the spectrum, you're like, Tanner, I don't care about my business working without me. I love what I do. I can't imagine leaving this business. That's okay too. I'm not saying that you have to do that. What I am saying is it's important to think about, what does works without you mean? For me, it's the freedom to show up where life truly needs you, and why works without you matters. So here up on the screen is a picture of my family. You've got my son Braden there up in front with me here. You've got my daughter Eleanor with her glasses there in the back. And then you got my wife Kari. And about a year ago, at time of this recording, unfortunately, my wife was diagnosed with breast cancer. Fortunately, everything has worked out very positive as we sit here about 12 months later. But in the moment, that was one of those kind of gut-wrenching situations. And if you've ever gone through something like this, or know somebody that's gone through something like this, you can imagine getting that news and sitting there going, oh, okay, now what? What do we do? And in this moment, and going through these things, I remember getting the news on a Thursday. I had just finished up some team meetings, was getting ready to go into a coaching session with the coach that coaches us. I'm preparing some information, all that kind of stuff. I get the call, and all of a sudden things change, right? Wasn't 100% out of the blues. We had some things that were leading up into this, but we had been really told that it was likely going to be nothing. Got the information. Well, Friday then became a day that everything on my calendar got moved. Like, it is now important that I show up, and we're going to go meet with the surgeon, figure out what comes up next. And thus started this journey of ups and downs and roller coaster here and there and all this type of stuff of what needed to happen next, right? So you had doctor's appointments that some I came to, some I did not come to. Sometimes I needed to be home and available to take care of the kids, right? Things changed. We had moments of like, things were going to be great, positive, let's move forward. And we had other moments of like, I don't know, this isn't looking so great. We might have some kind of worst case scenario situations to deal with. And this emotional roller coaster. All right. So you can imagine going through something like that. How good was I at showing up for the business in that moment? Not nearly as strong as I normally would be. Now, what I didn't tell you is that our business, our ActionCOACH franchise, is a family business. I'm a business with both my parents. My dad is our master coach. My mom, Jody, is our nonprofit executive and working with a lot of different nonprofits within the area. And to make matters a little bit more challenging, about three weeks or so after getting the information or getting the diagnosis for my wife, my grandmother passes away. And this is my mom's mom. This is a woman who is incredibly close to me and a huge component of my life. She and my grandpa actually helped raise me for a number of years at the very early stages of my life. And she passes away. This was a hard moment. It was a hard moment for me, but it was a hard moment for my mom. And she's out of the business. You know, for 6 to 8 weeks, zero work is getting done. She had to fly back up to Iowa, spend some time with Grandpa, work through all the different things that were happening as a result of this. My emotional state clearly was not in the best place. And my dad's trying to hold some things together the best he can. But again, family business. Now we've got 3 senior partners that are 40-ish% of the business at that point. Oh crap, what's going to happen? We're at 50-40% capacity, right? Well, this is where I think it's important to recognize that in this moment, in these trying moments, the business either becomes a pillar, something that supports everything else in your life, or it becomes an anchor, something that pulls you down and says, I demand so much of you that you can't show up for the things that matter. So when it comes to building a business that works without you, you've got to figure out, why does works without you matter to you? For some of you, it may be selling the business and exiting or having passive income. For others, it may just be, I want to take a vacation every now and again. It might be, I want to make sure that my clients are taken care of, even if I can't show up. Okay? Whatever that means to you, it's important to set that standard for you in your business, because when it comes to making the decisions that matter, we need to know where we're headed first. So digging into the numbers and the data, we had a spreadsheet full of numbers. I loved tracking everything, primarily because we started with not tracking much at all, which may be exactly where you are sitting. We were not tracking a bunch of stuff. And in 2022, we had kind of a rude awakening. It was a moment where we were sitting down with our coach and he asked us to pull out the financials. He was taking a look at the financials. I remember very clearly, clear as day, we're sitting there. He's looking at our financials, looks up at us, looks down at the financials, looks up at us. And it's like, I can't read these. And this is a guy who built multiple companies, and with his biggest one doing, I think, roughly $500 million in revenue. Someone that really knows how to look at business financials, especially of a company the size of ours. He's sitting here going, I can't read these. Like, oh, what do you mean? First, fire your bookkeeper. Oh, okay. Second, you need to go do some homework. So we kind of went on this journey and pulled together a cash flow statement and pulled together some additional things, cleaned up the books. It took us a couple months to get this done. And by the time we had the cash flow statement, we were hit with the fact that if we did not make drastic changes on that day, or at least that week, and we continued on the path we were on, despite getting some of the sales, we were going to be out of business in 4 weeks. We were literally burning cash and had no idea. We were not tracking enough to know what was going on in the business. And thus, we had to make some hard decisions, kind of restart the business from that point on, and had to regrow. From there, we started tracking a ton of stuff. We tracked our financial numbers. We tracked the marketing numbers. We tracked all of these types of things. Some of this we're going to talk about today. And eventually, over the course of a couple of years, we started to have a spreadsheet full of numbers, but none of them told us exactly what to do. So what actually changed? What changed is we had to start focusing on fewer numbers. 6 numbers instead of 60. Now, caveat here is that sometimes what's necessary is that you go overbuild and track more things to get a sense of how the business actually operates and how it runs, so that you can distill it down into the 6 numbers that matter to be paying attention to regularly, instead of looking at all 60. These are our headline KPIs, and we'll talk a little bit about that today. If your headline KPIs are not where they should be, then it's important to look at our supporting KPIs or our supporting numbers, which may be a few more of those in that bulk instance of 60. So we had to shift away from looking at all 60 and shift down to what are the 6 numbers that are most important to pay attention to. The second thing we needed to change in this case was that every number that we had, everything that we were tracking had to be owned, meaning that there was one name against every single number. Hey there, real quick, if you are enjoying the stuff that you are listening to, hearing right now, then you've got to take a look at what the next step could look like for you in your business. And that's why the team here at ActionCOACH has provided the opportunity to review your business in a deep diagnostic, which takes place over the course of roughly 2 weeks of free coaching. To learn more about this, go to actioncoachbenefitgroup.com/diagnostic. More information on that page, along with some diagnostic tools, additional opportunities for you to grow and have your business become less dependent on you. That's actioncoachbenefitgroup.com/diagnostic. The third thing that we had to change is that they were reviewed. We had a standing date every week for us to sit down and actually review what was happening in the business. Not when it hurts or when things are off, but every week we had a meeting. And I know, sounds great. Yay, get to have meetings. This is really, really important. If we're going to be a leadership team that's going to sit down, we need to understand what's happening in marketing, sales, fulfillment, finance, HR. Like, we need to know what is happening. What are the key numbers from each one of these? Are we on track or are we not on track? If we're on track, that can be a short meeting, move on. If we're off track in each area, then we need to dig in and talk about, as a team, how do we pull this back into the right direction? That is the point of reviewing our numbers. And it starts with your 90-day plan. What is happening each week, and are we on track for our plan or not? This review session is incredibly important. Make it a standing date. Make it mandatory. That was one major thing that we changed. So when we build a business, there are 6 key steps to building a business that can last and ultimately become a commercial profitable enterprise that works without you. They work primarily in sequential order. While you may still have some things that you're working across the spectrum, think of this almost as a pyramid, with the first left-hand side of this being the base of the pyramid and starting to move upward. It starts with mastery. Mastery is broken into 4 components. First component is destination. Where are we headed, right? Second is delivery. How consistent are we? How good are we at least providing the product or service that we are selling? The third is time. How do we use the capital of time, the resource of time? And then finally, it's financial or numbers mastery, which is where we're going to be spending a lot of our time today, because numbers are the language of business. If we're going to be making decisions in our business, if we're going to be making decisions based on real-time data, we better understand the language that is numbers, okay? Once we have this mastery completed, which is really reducing chaos within the business, we shift into marketing and sales, which is the predictable cash flow engine of your business. As we develop this strong foundation, then we move into the second area, or the second core area, which is made up of the next 2 areas, systems and then team layering upon it. Systems about creating leverage, where we create systems and processes and checklists and technology and things like that. And we point it at different areas within the business that we want to create leverage with. As these systems are put in place, then we bring on the amazing team to run these systems, because the systems ultimately are the thing that are running the business. Scale and freedom are then kind of the top tier of this. Scale is about duplication. How do we duplicate the things that we are doing and continue to grow the business? And freedom is your ability to take this step out, right? So that could be a operational exit where you are not doing all the work anymore, but you still get paid on the business. Or it could be a true financial exit where you sell the business and get multiple years of income all up at once. So today we're going to be spending most of our time talking about mastery and the numbers and the language of business. Okay, so mastery, about knowing your numbers. There are 3 numbers that most business owners tend to know if I were to ask you to come up with these. Some of you may know them right off the top of your head in the course of the last month, what these numbers were. Others may say, yes, I know them, but I need to go look at my QuickBooks account or my CRM or something else to be able to get these, which is totally fine. Most businesses know these 3 numbers. These 3 numbers are customers. It can be customers, clients, patients. How many do you have in that time period, called a month? How much revenue have you made, which is the total sales number, and ultimately, how much profit have you made? How much is left over after all the costs are done? Okay, so when we look at these 3 numbers, this is kind of some of the trap. And that's because when we take a look at how this moves, leads move first and revenue follows. So if we're looking at revenue and profitability, these are things that happen as a byproduct of things preceding before it, right? So revenue is considered a lagging indicator, but leads might be a leading indicator. If I know that we are getting enough leads into the business and our conversion rates stay roughly the same, our ability to make more sales goes up, but I won't see that until after these things take place. So this is why it's really important to understand when you're taking a look at the basic number things within your business. So think of your financials, profit and loss statement, your balance sheet, maybe your cash flow statement. All of these we tend to get after the close of a month. And depending on how fast you get them, that could be 7 days later, that could be 15 days later. In some case, it might be months later. Please don't let it be months. Please get that information sooner. But you're still looking at it after the previous month closes. So if you get revenue numbers that are not where they're supposed to be, or profit numbers that are not where they're supposed to be, they're low. We have not hit our goal. I got this report on the 10th of the following month. There's not a dang thing that I can do about changing the numbers beforehand. But if I am consistently looking at the leading indicators, like leads, then I can direct that and make decisions based on how it's converting and how it's moving downstream to impact our revenue numbers. So there's 3 kinds of numbers. Leading indicators. So this is the activity that you can actually control today. So I mentioned leads as an example of this. There are lagging indicators, or lagging numbers. These are the results that you find out about later. So your financial numbers are a really good example of results you find out about later. Why? Because we don't get the reports until the close of the month, once everything is settled. And then finally, there's the diagnostic numbers. These are the numbers that explain the other two, that gives us the detail underneath the other two. These are the things that we can take a look at and say, why are my leads where they are, good or bad? Let's diagnose the things that comprise that so that we can, again, fine tune and tweak different aspects of the business and where we're moving things to. So if we're going to be making great decisions based off of data, based off of numbers, it's important to understand what types of data, what types of numbers are we taking a look at. Leading indicators, lagging indicators, or diagnostic related numbers. So let's start with some basic numbers you can start to track. And I'm going to give you some math. Who's excited about math? Raise your hand. Usually I get a few people in the crowd that are like, yeah, that sounds amazing. More often than not, it's like, oh man, Tanner, you're going to make me do math? I'm like, yes, but I promise you, this one equation gives you the 5 levers, gives you the framework for how to run any business out there. Is the most amazing thing that I've ever learned when you understand how you can apply it in multiple different ways. Okay? So let's take an example. We've got those 3 numbers. They're up in yellow. We've got customers, revenue, and profit, right? These are those 3 numbers that most people can come up with or be able to tell me, right? Most business owners can tell me customer, revenue, and profit. The thing is, if I went to you and said, hey, go make more profit today, most of you would be like, yes, amazing, let's go do that. But like, what do I actually go do? Right? So we have to break that into, how do we generate profit? How do we understand what this machine looks like? So I love to think about this as the money-making machine in a business. And if we were sitting here together, I might even go through an example where I'd have a volunteer come up and we'd like have the machine and I'd actually work through what the machine looks like. But if you think of this as the machine in your business, any machine can be fine-tuned, souped up. Right? We can do different things to tweak it and continue to refine the mechanisms that make this machine work and produce the output, produce the outcome, which is profit. Okay? So how do we do this? There are 5 core areas for us to look into. Leads, conversion rate, average transactions per year. So how many times does somebody buy from you on average? The average value, the average dollar per sale, how much do they spend on average? And what are the margins, the profit margins? After you pay for everything, right? You pay for the labor, you pay for the materials, you pay for whatever it is that comprises you to fulfill on your service and your overheads, rent, utilities, all of that sort of thing. Once all of that's done, what percent is left? That is your margin, all right? And that gets us to profit. Now, this is kind of the 101 level of things. For those of you that are watching this going like, that's great, but I have so many more things. You might be right. The more complex, the better you build this chassis of this machine, the more areas we can fine tune it. Today, we're going to talk about these 5 core areas. So if we have these 5 core areas, then we can fine tune and we can tweak them. So the best way to think about this is to use an example. I'm going to use an example of a small hardware store. Think if you're sitting here listening to this, my guess is you can think of a little local small hardware store. I'm not talking like your Home Depots or things of that nature. I'm thinking like, think of Ace Hardware, think Hardware Hank, think, these small local shops. Okay. So think of that. We're going to take that as the example and we're going to use the course of a year. So for this little business has 4,000 leads that came into the business. So first and foremost, it probably would be important for us to define what is a lead. Okay. So what's a lead? Lead in this particular case is going to be anybody that walked into the store, called into the store, maybe responded to a flyer. Those are all going to be considered leads. We have somebody that had some level of interest and said, I'm kind of curious about the stuff that you guys sell, and I may have gotten some contact information as a result. So that's going to be the definition of a lead for this business. When you run these numbers for you, it is important that you define what lead means to you and you stay consistent. So if you do this today and then you do it again in a quarter, leads, that definition needs to be the same, so you're comparing apples to apples. All right, so this little business has 4,000 leads. We're going to say that in this particular case, they had a 25% conversion rate. So 1 in 4 actually bought things, which gives us 1,000 customers. That's 1,000 customers over the course of the entire year. All right. Now, for this little retail environment, these customers, they came in on average twice per year. So once again, you had some people that came in maybe once a month, came in 12 times throughout the year. And you probably had some others that came in, bought something, never came back again. That's okay too. But on average, each person came in roughly 2 times per year. And when they came in, they spent on average $100. Some came in and bought a $5,000 lawn tractor. Others came in and bought a paintbrush for $150. On average, though, they spent $100. So we run this math: 1,000 customers buying twice from us over the course of the year, and having $100 each time that they buy something gives us $200,000 in revenue. Now, for this business, we're going to say that they had 25% margin. So 75% of every single one of those dollars went to expenses, and they were left with $50,000 in profit. So nice little business. All right. So to understand how to do things, understanding how this money-making machine works, we're going to fine tune it. And this is where decision-making in the business becomes so incredibly powerful. We can take a look at this and go, where do we have the highest areas of leverage? Where can I point my decisions so that I can have the biggest impact on the downstream results? In this case, we're going to use an example of saying we're going to get 10% better in each area. That's all we're going to do. Over the course of 1 year, we're going to spend all of our focus only getting better by 10% on each of these 5 core areas. So if we do nothing, setting the stage, if we do nothing, year 2 is going to look exactly like year 1. We're still going to end up with 4,000 leads. We're going to end up with $50,000 in profit. But we're going to make some decisions. Our decisions will be first around leads. All right, let's talk about leads. What are some things that we can do about generating more leads? How do we improve that by 10%? Now, one of my favorites, because we're looking at decision making and data driven type stuff, well, take a look at where every lead came from. Which lead sources or lead channels, think networking, phone calls, flyers, right? These are all different ways that somebody finds out about you. Which of those produced the most sales in the last year? And what you probably will find is that there are 2, 3, or 4 that produce by and far more than anywhere else. But I might be spreading my dollars across all of them. All right, well, we're going to cut off all the things that don't work, and we're just going to focus on refining the ones that do and doubling down to get more leads. Because again, we're only looking for a 10% improvement, not all of our focus on this area. So 10% improvement, go from 4,000 to 4,400, just 400 more leads over the course of a year. Nothing crazy. Well, next we're going to do conversion rate. Again, we're going to take a look at this and say, well, how do we improve conversion rate? My favorite way to do this is scripts. It's the cheapest, easiest, most effective way to improve conversion rate. Go find the one person on the floor who outsells everybody else, who's amazing at what they do, copy what they do verbatim, right? Here's data, what they do, because they have a better conversion rate. We're going to go teach it to everybody else on the team. And then work with them to be that good or as close to that as possible. Do we need everybody to be absolutely amazing? No, we're just trying to get a 10% improvement. So you go from 25% to 27.5%. So we run our new math, 4,400 times 27.5% gets us 1,210 for customers. 210 more customers just by fine-tuning those areas, by making decisions on those 2 areas. Well, we got 3 more areas to work through. So let's take average transactions per year. Right now it's at 2. If we have the data, we know that we can do something with the information that we have, well, we can make a decision then. And that decision, in this particular case, is going to be, let's invite our customers to come back. I'm going to take my database, whatever that is. If it's in my point of sale system, I'm going to pull out those emails and send them an email. If it's in my CRM, I'll use my CRM. I'm going to take all those emails, I'm going to send an email, and that email is going to be, hey, it's been a while since you last came into the store. Would love to have you come in. Again, we just need a couple people, 10% improvement to come back in. We don't need everybody to come back every single time. We're not trying to go from 2 to 3. We're going from 2 to 2.2. Just inviting people to come back because we have the data and we're making a decision. Okay. Average value sale. Let's talk about that one. Well, how do we improve that one? My favorite way to do this, that's probably the easiest way to do it, is the old McDonald's, would you like fries with that? Add to the cart. Amazon does this as you click the button. It says, hey, do you want to add these things to your cart? Same thing. In a retail environment, that may look like all the stuff that they have around the cash register. And I don't know if it's going to come across in the video here, but everything that's like hip level and below, right there at the register, it's usually quick things to buy. And a lot of times it's like candy and quick things that, well, if you've got kids walking in with you, they're like, oh, this is eye level for me. Dad, put this in the cart. All those little things add up. We're not trying to get everybody to spend a whole bunch more money, but if we get a few people to start increasing their average sale, we're going to move the needle. We go from 100 to 110. Okay? Over the course of a year. Like, we're not talking about like next week, over the course of the year. So go our 1,210 customers times 2.2 transactions now, times $110 on average. And all of a sudden we have $292,820 in revenue. It's almost $100,000 more in revenue because we made some decisions about how we tweak these first 4 areas. Well, again, we don't stop there. We got one more area. We do the same thing with margins. And margins can be one of the most inexpensive ones that you can go after. Probably one of the top first areas that I would do even before going after leads. But I would focus on how do we improve this. There's a bunch of different things, probably 40 or 50 different strategies that we can go through. We pick one and we refine it. We make decisions around that. We go from 25% to 27.5%. Now you run 292,820 times 27.5%. You get $80,526 in profit. That's $30,526 more dollars than the year before because we fine-tuned it, understood what these metrics were telling us. Okay? Now, imagine you did that every single year. Year 1, $80,000 in profit. Get 10% improvement again in each of those areas. Year 2, you're almost at 130. Year 3, you're over 200,000. By year 5, you're doing $500,000 in profit. That's insane. But it's so simple. And I'm going to tell you a quick story about Adam. Adam's a client of mine. He came to us about 2 years ago, and he was doing that $50,000 in profit. And in just 2 years, we worked on getting the numbers visible for him, being able to really look at what it means to be a CEO and lead and make decisions based off of numbers. He grew his team from 3 to 13 and ended up with over $250,000 in profit in 2 years, right? So if we go back to this slide here, by year 3, just doing 10% improvements, by year 3, you're at 208,000. By year 4, somewhere between year 3 and 4, you would hit 250. He did it in 2 years. There we go. He did it in 2 years because he got the right numbers visible. Okay. So what's the scoreboard? What are the things that we need to be paying attention to? Here at ActionCOACH, we have the ActionCOACH Business Operating System. This is a way for us to install each of those core areas: mastery, marketing, systems, team, scale, freedom, and understand where are we at as a business. Because when you take a look at this, it gives you a sense of like what's green, what's yellow, what's red, what are the areas that are biggest constraints that I should probably put some focus to. Because your ABOS score, in this particular case, you got the 6 disciplines, 1 score each. There's no opinions. You go through and you do all this stuff and you see, okay, I got 88% in mastery, 83% in marketing, but scale's down at 74%, teams at 77%. Now your numbers will be whatever your numbers are. You take a look at this and you go, well, what do I do now? Now that I have numbers, now that I have some of this information, I can pick the lowest score and make some assumptions to begin with that it's probably a constraint within the business. So I can dig in and break it apart. So we go back here. You can see on the screen that there are kind of some subcategories. Let's go to systems there. You can see visions of 5 and it's green, but then culture and values got a little yellow mark. Checklist got a yellow mark. All right, well, there's some key areas that maybe I want to point some of my focus, some of my decisions to improve this area of my business are based on those types of things, right? So the lowest score is probably the constraint, and that's where you spend the next 90 days. So if I can make decisions around my business, it's meant to determine what are the areas that are holding my business back. Now, part of that might be within those 6 steps. Part of it may be going back to those 5 core areas to generate profit and say, my lead flow is great, but my conversion rate sucks. maybe I need to spend time specifically on that one area, and we're not going to aim for 10% improvement. We're going to go for a 40% improvement. What needs to happen? What strategies are we going to deploy? How are we going to track and measure that so we can see what decisions do we need to continue to make to continue to get better at it, right? And that's where you spend your next 90 days. It's how you make the decisions to actually improve the business. So we break this down. We take a look at this and say, where does every revenue dollar go, right? So if you have $1 million in revenue and you got $450,000 in cost of sales or cost of goods, you got $300,000 in payroll, you got another $180,000 in overheads, you're left with $70,000 in profit. So which of these makes the most sense for us to spend the most time on? In this case, I would probably take a look at, depending on the type of business, that $450,000, 45% of every revenue dollar is going to cost of sales. Well, I know that if we can improve that, let's say we get it from 45% down to 40%, so that would be $400,000 in cost of sales, right? If all I was able to do is work on that one area, every single extra dollar drops to the bottom line because it's not going to increase payroll. It's not going to increase overhead. We didn't change revenue. So all 50,000 of that would go straight to net profit. Well, that might be a really good area because I can see these numbers to make some decisions around and point the focus of my business for the next 90 days on improving that. So how do we read the P&L, right? So 3 questions, 90 seconds, do this every single month. When you get your P&L, look for things like this. What's the trend? Are things moving up? Are they moving down? Are they flat? Not just your revenue, but your cost of goods, your overheads. Are there trends starting to emerge here? Like, my material costs in my cost of goods kind of seems to be trending up, even though my revenue's flat, which tells me there's probably something happening with the cost of the material, right? So maybe there's some supplier things that I need to go work on. Maybe I need to change suppliers, or perhaps it's time to start looking at readjusting my pricing because the actual materials have gone up. Like I can't continue to sustain and allow it to eat away at my profit margin. So we got to look for trends and vice versa. If things are going down, like what does that tell us? The next thing that we take a look at is mix. Which lines changed and by how much? One of my favorite things to do. So this would be something, write this down, go do this when the next time you get your P&L. All right. I want you to look at your P&L and I want you to look at it month by month. So you should see January, February, March, April, May, all the way through for as long as you can get. So ideally a 12-month look back, but at least the last 3 or 4 months. But get them lined up. If we're in August now, I want to see June, July, August. Like I want to see each of these numbers because I want to see what's changed month over month and by how much. If something has changed by more than 5 or 10%, I want to flag it, circle it, highlight it, do something that says this is out of the ordinary, good or bad. What happened that caused that difference in result? And do I need to make some decisions around it? In some cases, it may just literally be, I had this extraordinary expense. I wasn't planning on it, but it's a one-time thing. It's never going to happen again. Okay, great. Well, now we can explain that. But there might be others of like, ooh, that popped up and I guess I didn't realize I was getting a price increase on this thing. I'd probably need to readjust my budget so that I can better plan for what my cash position is going to be. So that's why we do that exercise. The third one is going to be margin. Did we keep more of every dollar? If we're not increasing our margin while also growing the business, we're not making as much money. So that goes back to some of that example I showed on the previous screen. If your cost of sales continues to grow and takes up more percentage of your revenue dollars, every dollar or every percentage that you can knock back off of that and keep that under control, all of it drops to the bottom line, which means you get to walk away with more money. So when it comes to some of this stuff, now we're taking the financial side of things. We're going to kind of break this into what can I do with the data. So if I know this information and I'm getting consistent at tracking my financial numbers, well, it's important to forecast forward, like what do I need to do in order to hit the numbers I want to hit? So if I want a $5,000 profit, what numbers do I need to hit? So here's a very simple example, okay? So we're going to assume that this business that we're using as an example has $30,000 worth of expenses. And when we look at the P&L, it's pretty consistent to be right around $30,000 every month previously. Well, I also know that I want to make $5,000 in profit. So we know what the expenses are. Now we're setting our target for what we want to actually walk away with as profit. In this case, we're going to use the number 5,000. So if we've got expenses at 30,000 and a profit number at 5,000, and we add those two things together, that means we need at least $35,000 in revenue, right? If you have 35,000 in revenue, you subtract out the expenses of 30,000, that leaves you $5,000 in profit. All right. We have $35,000 worth of revenue. Well, I get to subtract out any revenue that I know is coming into the pipeline, whether I do anything or not. We call this book revenue. So if you've got a subscription or a membership style business where people are continuing to pay you every month, you probably have a book of business that if you did nothing, you're still going to have some money coming in. Now, others of you probably don't have this. It's like my book revenue is zero. If I do nothing, I got nothing coming in. Okay, that's totally fine. It just means that that number is zero. In this case, we're going to assume that there's $15,000 of book revenue. If I do nothing, I'm going to get $15,000 worth of sales regardless, right? I don't have to go get new sales here. 35,000 minus 15,000 leaves you 20,000 in new sales that you have to go get, or your team has to go get. Okay, so we're using this data to figure out what is the new sales number that I need to go after. That's great, but how do we take this another step forward to understand that's still kind of a lagging indicator. What are the leading indicators? So we're going to do some more math. This is fun. I know you guys are just loving me because we're doing some math today. So first and foremost, we take that $20,000 new sales number, right? So we took that from the previous slide, putting it here. Now, in this case, we're going to assume that the average dollar sale is $1,000. So every time that somebody is buying something, that sale amount, that total contract value that the sales rep is getting is roughly $1,000. Again, some higher, some lower, but on average, it's $1,000. So I have 20,000 divided by 1,000 gives us 20 total sales. So I have to get 20 sales. All right, now we're getting some more data. Amazing. If we take 20 sales and we know that on average, our sales conversion rate is 40% from appointment to close, then I can run the math backwards, go 20 divided by 40%. So for those of you at home doing the math, 20 divided by 0.4 equals 50, which means I need 50 appointments in order to get 20 sales, because we're not going to close everybody, but I need to sit enough meetings in order to get the sales, right? So now I need 50 appointments on my calendar that I can sit. That's already wildly more useful than saying I need $20,000 in sales. Well, I know I can go do something to get 50 meetings on my calendar. All right. Well, I'm guessing, has anyone ever had, somebody ghost them before? Just not show up to a meeting? My guess is you're nodding, saying yes. For some of you, you might be saying, I might even have been that person before. Well, we know that the show rate's unlikely to be 100% over a long enough time period. So what is the average show rate? In this case, we're going to use the number 75%. So 75% of everybody that we book appointments to actually show up. So if that's the case, we take 50 divided by 75% or 50 divided by 0.75. So it can give you 67 leads or 67 people that you need to put into an appointment. All right. That gives me something very specific that I can actually go do. So if we're making decisions, we're making management decisions, it comes down to we cannot manage revenue, but we can manage activity. I can't really get mad at my team for saying, hey, go hit $20,000 in sales and never give them the pathway to get there. But if I give them the pathway and say, you need to go get 67 leads, well, that's something that I can break down into weekly and daily. And that's what I need to get up and go do each day. So the scoreboard starts to look like this, right? If it's not measured, it's not a KPI. Yay, measuring things. It's things like leads, conversion, average dollar sale, right? Taking some things from those 5 ways areas and saying, these are great places to start and just put up as my scorecard. Are we on track for this or not? What's our gross margin? Meaning, how much are we actually making off of each of the things, right? If I sell something for $100, but it cost me $110 to make it, I'm technically losing money, even though I got sales. So what is the gross margin? Are we seeing what we need to here? Cash days. This is really important for those of you that have a longer sales cycle. If you're in manufacturing and you have money that goes out for materials and things like that on day one, but it takes you 30 days to get the project done and shipped, and then you invoice it, and that's still a 30 to 60 day time period. You've got potentially a 90 plus day window where you're fronting capital before you get paid on it. What is the number of days in that cash cycle? In that case, if you're not prepared for it, you can absolutely sell yourself out of business. And then not net profit margin. How much do we actually keep? So this is a really good example of a scoreboard that you can start with, right? If it's not measured, it's not a KPI. But whatever KPI needs is an owner, one name, not a department. Who owns the outcome of this particular number? A target, a standard, a number, not just a direction, but this is what we are looking to achieve, and a date. When will it get reviewed? Because if we're not reviewing it consistently, it's really difficult to make any real decisions here. Okay? So every KPI needs an owner, a target, and a date. And to manage this, we look at the management meetings, a system for consistent results. Now, for those of you out there that are like, no, less meetings. Yes, to a point. But we need to understand these these 6 core areas, The annual plan. Where are we headed? Not just for your knowledge as the business owner, but for your team. Do they know where you're headed? Do they know what we're looking to achieve each quarter? And then the quarterly plan, the quarterly review. What's happening every single week? Are we on track for our annual goals? Are we on track for the things we need to accomplish in this quarter? The monthly review. So some of this is the financial numbers because you're getting those on a monthly basis. Some of this is, what did we learn from the last month that we need to make some changes on? But how do we keep track of that consistently? Weekly one-to-ones with your team members, which isn't necessarily about you going in and grilling them on a whole bunch of information, but have them come report the things that they're doing. It gives them a sense of ownership to say that I own this thing and I'm excited to tell you about where I'm at. And if I'm not where I want to be, this is the opportunity for them to ask some questions and gain the assistance that they need to actually get the results. I don't know about you, but most people that I come across tend to actually want to be successful. The weekly work in progress meeting, which is really kind of get everybody together and talk about what is on our list for this week, who's working on what, how do we help one another? And then the daily huddle, just a quick 5-10 minute, where are we at for the day? What are we targeting for? So I'll share a quick story of Kevin Jacobson on time, money, and choice to kind of bring some of this home. So Kevin is the guy there in the middle, and they ran a company called CIT Sewer Solutions. And great client that came to us in about 2017, started coaching, went through a few years, and then really doubled down on what numbers to track, what numbers to leverage, and how to do things within the business. In that first year or so, they were doing 10% profit, about $41,000 in profit. Over the next couple years, they jumped to 26% profit, doing $750,000, 37% profit, getting to $1.4 million in profit by kind of the last year or two before this next piece, which is December 2025. They exited on a 6.5x multiple of their net income number and retained 32%. Okay, this happened because they doubled down and really focused on how do I make better decisions in my business. And it became a life-changing exit from where they started at $41,000 in profit to a 6.5x exit on $1.4 million. So to bring this all together for us today, 6 numbers beat 60. Have fewer numbers. First, we may need to track more things to know what those most important numbers are. But once you've got that information, distill it down so you can make decisions off the things that actually matter, things that move the needle. Make them visible. Put it on a wall, not in a folder. Okay? You can do this in a CRM. You can do this in visualization tools. You can do this literally by drawing stuff up on the board and updating it every single day or every single week. Make it visible so that people can see what's actually happening so we can make decisions based on real-time data. And third, which goes right to that, is are we reviewing it? Review it on a cadence, not on a crisis. Have dates and times on the calendar that are mandatory. You do these 3 things, and your decision-making in the business will become 10 times more effective. So now, what ensures that this stuff actually happens? Accountability breeds responsibility. Stephen Covey once said, when individuals know that they will be held accountable, they are more likely to take ownership of their work and be proactive in finding solutions and achieving the desired outcomes. Accountability breeds responsibility. Here at ActionCOACH, we've got the opportunity for you to find out what does accountability look like for you. The best way to know, the best way to see if coaching can work for you is to simply try it for the next 2 weeks. No obligation, no strings attached. By the end of those 2 weeks, having a little bit of accountability, having that partner that ideally you've grown to trust will give you the pathway of whether this is a good fit for me. And if so, we'll talk about what that looks like. If not, that's fine too. 2 weeks, it's my gift to you as the CEO of ActionCOACH Benefit Group. And you can either grab the link in the description below or simply scan the QR code here to apply for your first 2 weeks for free. This has been how to make better decisions in your business using the data. I've been Tanner O'Brien, CEO of ActionCOACH Benefit Group. I want to thank you for your time today.